First off, obviously, congratulations to our men's and women's basketball programs to see Brad and his crew and Shauna and her crew be able to advance to postseason play is absolutely awesome. Excited for them. Obviously, I always think this, right? When I'm here at Illinois, any publicity is great publicity for us in general, right? And just an excellent opportunity to be on a big time scale with both those programs in the postseason. Hats off to them. Just had a fun weekend here. We actually just finished with the IHSA football clinic, which was the largest I think they've ever had here. Just a lot of really good interaction starting from Thursday night till Saturday with the Hall of Fame banquet. I know is the largest banquet as well as clinic. To have that growth just in our 4 years of being here, and a lot of positive feedback from Illinois high school coaches. We also have invited in and kind of formulated a format that brought in high school coaches from all over the country, a lot of states surrounding us here that brought in some great speaking and really fun, productive weekend. In general, we got through practices 1 through 3. We were in spiders and helmets, practice 1 and 2 had our first full day on Saturday. We're able to be out on the grass, literally, and right outside our stadium here, and to get on the grass, full padded practice. Had a really productive 2-hour practice. A lot of really good things showed up. I think offensively, defensively, special teams got good work in. And we'll jump into week 2. We'll throw our little bit different schedule this week because of Easter weekend. Just kind of looking at it over the last couple of years, giving our guys a chance to celebrate Easter with their families and whatnot. So we're practicing on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday of this week. Not going on a normal Saturday practice. That'll get us through week 2 and then jumping into the final 3 weeks of spring football on the back end of that. I think offensively, to see the growth of our team, certain positions, obviously Luke at quarterback, but really get excited about a couple guys. Donovan Leary has been really good. Kirk Lamishow have been equally impressive. And a new guy, Trey Petty, really like what he did this first week of being in spring football. And then Josh McCrae and Aiden Lofty really our 2 top running backs that are healthy and fully cleared, have had a really productive week. Offensive line-wise, the standard usual Geske has made a huge jump. Josh Kreutz, I think Zy Chrysler, but a couple of new guys into the mix. J.C. Dave has been very impressive at left tackle, what he brings to the skill set. Melvin Priestley, another new guy. Kevin Wigginton to a certain level at center and guard. I really like that growth and that development in the tight end room. Griffin Moore, probably had his best week since I've been in here. But Tanner Arkin has continued to come forward and do really good things. And then a new guy in Cole Rusk, really impressed with his first week of spring ball here in the program. Flipping on the other side, and then a wide receiver, Pat Bryant, just continues to be the alpha in the room. Very impressed with his leadership where he is. I would say that a couple of young guys, Malik Elzy, Ashton Hollins, both had good weeks. A couple of guys, Keon Battle that showed up and did some stuff. Alice Capca Jones, Hank Beatty, a couple new Kanari Wilcher, new arrival in Rio Sanders. Just really impressed with that room, and more impressed Coach Stepp, just really what he brings to the table. A huge impact on our program defensively, from the back end or from the front end back. Really like Alex Bray and what he brought to the room, but Dennis Briggs, Anthony, and Sledge was a little bit banged up, so we couldn't get him in there. But really like on the front end, Jeremiah Warren, and I would say the guy that made a big jump, in my opinion, T-Rod Edwards, really had a good week and has had a great winter all the way through. On the outside, probably our most talented position room. Obviously, with Clint coming in there and coaching for the first time like that, but Gabe Adams, Alec Bryant, Seth Coleman, Trey Smith, Daniel Brown, a newcomer, probably one of our twitchier, more athletic guys on the whole football team. At inside back, we're a little bit banged up, but a guy that has stood out there that's been able to go the whole week, Jared Beatty, Ryan Mead, those 2 guys in particular really showed up last week. Dylan Rosiak, a little banged up. Obviously, Kanena Kangul and James Kreutz was injured. And then in the back end, Miles Scott continues to be the guy that kind of just turns heads and makes everybody kind of get excited about where he's coming, where he's going. Mac Rosetich in the safety room. Tyler Strain, using him a little bit in the nickel and corner room. Some of those young DBs. Chase Canada got rolled up on an ankle, so limited his involvement last week. But really like that group. And special teams wise, I would say Hugh, Breezy, and David Alano all are hitting the ball extremely well, and Lane Hanson's had a great week as a snapper. So a lot of positives. Excited about the new coaches and ready to jump into week 2. With that, I'll open up for questions.
Coach, you've got 2 new coaches in the Big Ten this year. You're going to see. Do you worry about that now? Do you deal with that at all, or is that down the road problem or down the road issue for you guys?
2 new coaches, you said?
Yeah, Michigan State have new coaches.
Yeah, I got a new coach in Oregon. Got a new coach in
Good point.
Indiana. Right, like there's a lot of new coaches that you really get into. At certain points during the out of season, you game plan as coaches and you scheme and look at things. Obviously, we have KU coming back on schedule, so we've obviously put in work on them. So yeah, there's new coaches really at an unprecedented level in the Big Ten Conference. But I think a lot of that is for the coaches. We don't really get into schematics of an opposing team, especially when we're not in divisional play anymore right now. I think obviously with Northwestern, Purdue, that's a different segment as they become more of a standard for us. But overall, not really anything at this point. It would be something we take up in the fall for sure. And then depending on when we play them in the year, next year we open up with Eastern Illinois on a Thursday night game that got released. And then obviously to come back and play KU, but KU had transition on their staff as well. So things will probably be a little bit different there as well.
Is this as crazy as it's been in your time as a coach in terms of the turnover and all the switches and conferences and all that stuff?
Well, I think anytime you add 4 new teams to your conference, right, and you go away from divisional play, that in a sense always changes things. But for me, it's been awesome. I really have enjoyed getting to know a couple of new coaches. Coach Smith I'd known before. Dan I'd known a little bit. Lincoln, we'd crossed paths a couple times when I was in the NFL, and then in college, just crossing paths on certain different levels. Jed Fish and I go back a long, long way. Have known each other a number of years, so it's been fun in that regards. And then obviously with the new commish and everything that Tony brings to engage us as coaches, it's been a fun time. I don't think it's maybe it's an all new high just because of the exposure, but it's really just kind of what football is at this point.
Thanks, George.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Bret, on the offensive line, you've got kind of a mix of guys who are returning, who played a lot of snaps, and you've obviously gone and added some impact transfers. So I guess what's the process for you guys of sorting that? I know you mentioned like JC at left tackle. That seems to be kind of a common refrain we hear. So what's the balance of sorting all that out here?
First and foremost, Joey, I think as we went through a critical analysis of where we were a year ago, I don't think we had enough quality offensive line players to fill a too deep to the level that we thought we needed in the Big Ten play. And especially, when all of a sudden Dez was not available, had some injuries of our current returning players, as well as guys from a year ago. Julian Pearl has a pretty significant hand injury early in the Kansas game, right? Missing some guys banged up with some knee injuries that we missed. So just overall felt we needed to build that depth in that roster a lot higher than it was in the offensive line position. So that was priority number 1. We added some live bodies to it. Now to get our best 5 and really to have our top 8 to 10 players that were available for us to, you want to have a solid 2 deep in a swing, which would obviously bring you to a 12 to 13 man offensive line group. But I think just to get a solid, our 5 best players, our top third at both center, guard, and tackle takes you to 8 guys, at a minimum. But I think if we can get 8 to 10, maybe 11 guys that we feel can win football games, that's the goal that we're on right now.
I just have kind of a housekeeping question. It looked like, and I don't know if I saw this wrong, in the practice we saw that Tyson Rooks may have been a wide receiver, at least somebody wearing number 9 and looking like him. Is he moved there?
Yeah, he has. I'm sorry, I should have said that in last week's press. Yeah, Tyson Rooks, we just kind of took a look at where he was and where we thought he could go out of high school. I actually, when we recruited him, I intended him to play on offense, but we were a little thin on defense. So we moved him to that. He did well in his first year that we did it, and then just presented him with the opportunity during the out of season, and he jumped at it and really has been a fairly impressive kid here through winter conditioning in the first week of spring ball.
Thanks, Bret.
Yep.
Hey, Bret, I want to ask you about 2 guys you added last year from the JUCO ranks, Prince Ford and Caleb Patterson. What have you seen from them as they enter their second year, and what do you need to see from them to kind of get into that mix there in the second year?
Yeah, Caleb actually joined us, halfway through the year last year and was a really impressive talent coming out of junior college. We're excited to be around. Last year, about midway through the year, we put him on as a guy that defends our punt return package, which we basically put a guy on their top coverage guy, kind of like Sidney and Quan, and were our top coverage guys 2 years ago at that gunner position, right? And he literally covered some of the best players in our conference at a high level on that unit, which got us excited about what he could do as a cover corner. So he's had a really good winter, and I would say through week one, probably the most impressive corner that stood out of the guys that weren't in the playing rotation a year ago. So really excited about him. Prince Ford does flash, does some things. The problem, obviously, he came in at a light corner that needs to have added body weight, and he hasn't done anything to change that, right? So until he changes that, we really can't put him in a position to be on the field for us. So there's some things he's got to take care of away from the game that I'm excited for. But those two guys in particular had a lot of reps last week and played at a high level.
And with the young guys behind them, Jaheim, Zach, and Sabor, them getting some experience last year, how does that translate into this spring that you've seen?
And you probably saw Sabor, we moved to the safety position. Him and Mac Resetich got a lot of reps at the boundary safety, which is where Matt Bailey would be, Demetrius Hill. But Sabor in particular had a really good week. I thought he made a huge jump. Again, a kid that just, very impressive out of high school, loved his upbringing, loved what mom did with him. Renice, his mom, wish we could send her about 20 of our guys, right? She just kind of lies and does things in a way that puts her son in a position to be coachable and have success. He really had a good week and excited to see him grow. I would say, yeah, for sure, Jaheim and there's one other.
Toby.
Yeah, Zach Toby. Both of them made progress. I think the game for them, especially working with Coach Gibbs in the back end, there was a good week, but I think they're going to make a big jump in the second to third week.
Thanks, Bret.
Yep.
Bret, how did you and your staff evaluate Gabe Yakas' sophomore year, especially since, he was obviously on the top of the scouting report after being a freshman All-American, and now that, Clint can get his hands on him, what does the future look like for him?
Yeah, the biggest part about Gabe is, I think as he came in as a freshman, experienced good success, a little bit of a different look for him from schematically what he did in high school. Much of the same what we went into last year. We did a lot of the same things, but maybe a little bit more of some skill sets that weren't something that he was familiar with or as good as he wanted to be, and really challenged him to have a work ethic coming in January. He's not only matched that, he surpassed it. Yesterday afternoon, I was on daddy duty. My wife was with Bella at a birthday party, and I brought Brexley in to work with me for a couple hours yesterday afternoon, and I was trying to sneak peek some scrimmage film and watch that, and she was doing work, and then she wanted to go down to the indoor. We went down to the indoor, and Gabe Adams was in there having a workout individually on his own and sweating at a high level. My daughter was like talking to him and saw the work he was putting in on a Sunday afternoon all by himself. So I know the attitude for him is huge. Schematically, I think we could do some things that are going to help him out, perform and play to his strengths. And then also just the growth that I think he took from year one to year two, and the realization of where he wanted to get to be in year three is going to be a huge step.
Just a quick housekeeping, just in these 15 spring practices, what are the rules on how much you can scrimmage and how much will you scrimmage with these guys over those?
Yeah,
15?
the NCAA, that you're allowed to have 3 total scrimmages where it's nothing but scrimmages. So right now we have those scheduled for the 6th, 13th, and 20th. Obviously, spring game's an easy one. The 6th will have it. The 13th, I think, would be a modified day. But they also open up the rules a little bit. So there's those 3 scrimmage days, but there's 5 days that you can use as full tackle days where you can maybe work a certain number of plays as long as the percentage falls under where it needs to be. So we'll sprinkle those 5 days in, kind of usually about every Tuesday, but we'll change that up as needed.
Thanks, Bret.
Yep.
A couple of recruiting questions. Looks like you've had plenty of high school kids coming in to check out spring practices. What have the new coaches on your staff added from a recruiting standpoint? Are there some new faces that they're out there chasing?
Yeah, on the offense side, Justin Stepp comes in really just a guy that, himself describes himself as a relentless recruiter. I would think just the part that's been very impressive to me is not only, since his arrival, but every day since then, just his daily process, his routine that he goes through has engaged me with, he coaches obviously the wide receiver, so he's recruiting receivers. So I've been blown away with the daily contact that he has with me that allows me to help recruit receivers that we're after, but also I think we're going to maximize his area in the Dallas area, as well as, maybe areas he's been at from the area he's from in South Carolina and all that goes into it. On the defense side of the ball, very similar story. Archie McDaniel, who played at A&M, is from Texas, has been extensive in certain areas in Dallas. We'll definitely maximize that and use him a little bit in our junior college recruiting, as well as a couple other areas that we'll kind of, put him in. Without a doubt, we'll use Clint in his area that he's in Virginia, but also he'll be our primary recruiter on the East Coast in New Jersey. And then David Gibbs, he and I first really began to be around each other and become as close as we've been over the last 30 years through our recruiting areas in South Florida. He's really done a great job of recruiting Florida his entire career, and he fits naturally into that Orlando east side of Florida as best we can. And then really because of the addition of those four guys and their strengths, I'm going to keep Thad in the St. Louis area, but with his new role as our assistant head coach, really expand his recruiting efforts and give him more of an area in South Florida, as well as the area he had in North Florida. Redefined our Ohio area. If you guys go back to my original staff, I really wanted Ohio to be a point of emphasis in recruiting. And then because I had hired Ben to do that and the transition that we had there, it's really been kind of hard to establish someone. So to expand JMO's role in Ohio, as well as possibly one or two other guys that could dip into Ohio as well, is something we're really taking a look at.
I believe there's a spring portal window. Where do you feel about the roster right now? Do you feel like the roster is set now, or there's still some pieces that you'd like to add and some scholarships available?
Yeah, right now there is a spring portal window that opens up really when we get done with spring ball. I think everybody in college football is bracing themselves for what this is going to be. I think a lot of prognostications and some people that forecast are saying this may be an unprecedented time. I think the portal world, ever since I've been here, and since every year that the portal world and the NI world has continued to blend together, you're starting to see some amazing stories happen. There's one within our conference that's being reported that probably is unprecedented with someone that goes and comes back and goes back again. I think as you are in this business, you realize kids have relationships to high school coaches, and then they have relationships with recruiters out of high school, position coaches, assistant coaches, and staffs that they were recruited by previously because of the world that we're living in, right? Like kids that play well are going to obviously have a chance to have an opportunity to go places to play at a higher level of maybe NIL opportunities, right? We'll just say, right? So it's something that what we do in this building is we recruit every day, our own roster. We roster develop. I always tell our coaches there's never been a time in college football more important than where we are now to roster develop. So not only our guys that are maybe in the 2 deep, but also the guys that are on that third and fourth level that you project them to be your starter maybe a year from now or 2 years from now. You got to sell those guys on the belief of what they're doing and what they're getting by being here at Illinois, even though they may not see the playing rewards right now.
Thank you, Coach.
Hey, Brett, I just had two more. I know last week we had talked about Aaron and David Gibbs kind of sharing an umbrella there in terms of the same room. What have I know the early returns, it's been really early, but what have you liked about the dynamic of those two under the same, I guess, roof, for lack of better terms?
Well, I think first off, that group collectively is meeting together, right? So to get them all on the same page, and we do have some new faces in there, but we don't have a lot of old heads, especially you take Xavier Scott and Matt Bailey are still not practicing with us. So two of our premier players are involved in meetings, but they're not involved in practice, right? So to see that blend together, and then I think Aaron and David to play off each other in the meeting room, but then to go out on the field has been really, in my opinion, very, very apparent to see the early results of the way those guys are communicating, talking. T. Strange playing at a level that I haven't seen him play at through 3 practices. It's been pretty impressive to see the growth of the young corners, especially with Xavier Scott not being out there at the corner room, and also to see the limitations that Chase wasn't. So a lot of those young players are getting a lot of reps. I'm excited to see that. And Mac Resetich, I think, to have the daily detail of Aaron Henry in his hip pocket has been really good. And then Miles Scott has just really been impressive, the jump he made.
Then I have one more since we're talking to Josh tomorrow. I would imagine it's been kind of a long couple years for him after that freshman year. So how have you seen him? And we'll ask him too, but just from your perspective, how have you seen him work through all of that?
I'm just incredibly impressed with the maturity that I know he's always had, right? Like I remember literally talking to him the first time that I ever did in January after I got hired here, just, a pretty down to earth guy, right? Like I think I was asking about him as commitment graphic and he wanted one with a welding mask because he loved to weld, right? Like it was one I hadn't heard before. Usually it's about the fancy graphic and the flash and the bling, but he's a workman type mentality. I literally get messages when he's home on break and he'll send me the fish that he caught, right? Like he just isn't wired like these other maybe high priority or high level guys are. He's unfortunately had two significant independent injuries that were kind of, I wouldn't say they're freakish because they come about naturally in the game of football the way it's played, but two injuries that took a lot of time out in two independent years that I think a lot of kids would get disappointed, disheartened, or frustrated, and he's just used it as motivation to go higher, right? And then the flip side of it, I mean, just complete opposites. And when Aiden Lawfrey and Josh McCrae, those guys are literally talking on every play in the growth of that room, and that's spearheaded by Josh. Thad does an unbelievable job of building that in our room. And then as far as an all-look team to see, right behind Aiden Lawfrey and Josh McCrae growing and building and doing things, then you see right behind them every rep at practice, you see Caden Fagan and Jordan Anderson taking the same rep behind them, two big, good-looking jokers, and they're in green because they can't go, but you start to drool and salivate after what is coming there, right? And then obviously to have another additional player coming in the fall that kind of sits a different skill set. It's a very exciting time for that running back room in our group.
Thank you, Bret.
Yep.
Brett, you talked about the high school clinic you were able to do. I know those guys really appreciate hearing from you, but I'm curious if you have any stories throughout your career, if it's trickled upward, meaning there's high school coaches that are doing something that you go, man, I got to talk to that guy, or that guy's doing something I think it'll work for me. And has it trickled upward for you in that regard?
It has, and it started way before this clinic, right? So I distinctly remember, and I actually was a moderator for a clinic panel that had 5 coaches up there that we were able to ask questions. I moderated it, and I just kind of gave those guys questions. First one was, like, when did you know you wanted to get in coaching and why, right? Well, I'm sitting there and, you have 5 coaches, kind of all different coaches. Coach Holmes, who's an former Illinois player who had a great career in the Chicago area, and to hear his stories and reflections and memories was truly educational to me. And then Derek Leonard, who obviously is Ken Leonard's son, 2 of the greatest high school coaches in the history of Illinois football. I think I met Derek Leonard in like 1994 or 95 when I went in to see Derek Leonard, and he was a young high school player, right? That the coach was talking about his son, and now to sit down on a panel with him and hear him tell stories. He had Coach Montgomery, who was in from Jenks High School out in Oklahoma, and to hear his side of it, bring it. But I told the story. I said, what my second question to them was, what was the greatest coaching skill that you ever stole from another coach, and did you ever tell him that you stole it, right? And I started the story off because I took a coaching point that I learned from a high school coach in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at Boyd Anderson High School. Coach Stick was working with a group of young linebackers. I was recruiting a kid by the name of Abdul Hodge at Boyd Anderson in May of 1997, maybe 96, 97. And it was about how to do a zone drop, sink your shoulders over your toes and drop your weight, and you will settle into your drop. And it's something I literally used that next fall, which made us better. Coaches are always stealing, right? Like we steal a scheme, we steal a play, we steal a coaching point. I remember being at a clinic my first year here as a head coach. I walked into an 8 a.m. clinician talk, and it was a special teams talk. And it sounds silly, but punt return is the one unit you coach that if you call a right return, it's to your right when you're facing the ball. But if you get turned around in the drill, your right side is now the left side. And a lot of kids get screwed up because they tricklily get turned around. They still don't know their right and their left, but it's an elementary thing. So that coach talked about how he named his return units off of the sidelines of the home or the away team. And I just had this epiphany in my head where I'm like, that's brilliant, right? Like now you literally, the one thing that isn't changing during the play is that's their sideline and that's our sideline, and they would call it according to that. So I think coaches, we all try to take and learn on a daily basis. And the moment you stop doing that is the moment that you'll stop growing as a coach.
Thank you, Brett.
No.
Brett, I just want to ask you about getting back on the AFCA board of trustees here. Obviously, it's a really interesting time, important time for college football, and I know you got your opinions of what things should do. So, what do you hope your impact can be being back on the board here?
Ironically, when I was in my previous life as a head coach in this conference at Wisconsin, I was on several AFCA board panels and got to know a lot of coaches. Ironically, a lot of the coaches I know today, not only in our conference, but outside of our conference, were guys that I had relationships with on that level. You don't compete against everybody nationally, but you do. And then at Arkansas, I continued forward when I went off and when I was in the NFL. As soon as I came back, I reached out to the board and basically the executive director and said, hey, if there's anything I can do, I love this profession. I love what we do. And then Craig Bowl now is our executive director, and Craig reached out to me going back as early as last season. And then as soon as the season was done, they called James Franklin is also on our board from the Big Ten Conference, but they wanted to add more, and they asked me if I would. And it does take away a lot of time. There's about 2 or 3, 4 things that you have to do during the course of the year in the out of season. But I feel very strongly about this game that we love. I think it's a game that needs a voice, and the American Football Coaches Association has a voice, and I want to be able to help it as best I can. So extremely excited to be a part of this crew and to be on a national level that we can have an influence in the game. I couldn't be more excited.
Is there anything in particular you want to push for, influence, or that you're really passionate about?
You know what, Jeremy? I think you guys know this about me. I love when we work together in the same direction. Like the world that we live in today, it's all about communication. And I've really, even just here in a short month or two since we've decided to do this, I know it just got announced today, but we've really been kind of working on this for a month or two just to get everybody on the same page, right? Like a lot of people have great ideas, thoughts. There is no better time than to be a Division I head football coach in the history of college football than right now. Everybody wants to think about the negatives or the views that they have. Like, I love the portal. I love the NIL. I love the transition we're going through. If you approach it in any other way, it's just going to be detrimental to you and your team. And it couldn't be a more exciting time. Now, what I think we have to do is bring awareness to what's going on. There's certain things that I think that the people that are in charge that are making these rules, they just don't know enough about college football to forecast issues, right? Like right now, a grad student literally can change teams at any point in his time. Well, these portal worlds that exist in December, January, and the next one that's coming that Doug mentioned, like, is coming in April and May. Like, those are great, but a grad student can transfer a week before the opening game and not have any penalty. That makes no sense, right? And some of these recruiting calendars and the way we got things set up, they don't make sense for the player or the coaches or the teams involved. So to kind of just bring common sense is what I'm hoping that we can use. And then, I think before people used to be the coaches had agendas. I just want to promote the game. We're a team that uses all different levels of tempo, multiple different defensive schemes. I just want to make the game great, and that's what we're all trying to do. I mean, the game has never been more popular, never been more exciting, never been more bountiful for players, and for coaches, administrators, and now players. So it's really a fun time. And then also to partner with Josh. Josh is an innovative guy, right? Like, he and I literally, obviously, he's been very busy with the basketball world, men's and women's, that's going on. He and I had a phone call early this morning just on some big picture items we're dealing with, and to be partnered with a guy like him, who also nationally has a lot of power. He's on a couple committees that are as powerful gets in college football, and to have that is pretty cool as an AD and a head coach.
Thanks, Brett.
Everybody good?
Thanks, Coach.
Safe travels, everybody. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Brett.